Recording. All right. Right. And so again, just to get yourself set up, start with a reclining heart opening. My suggestion for this, and I'll make various suggestions of how to utilize the props and whatnot throughout, but always trust what is true for you in your body. So if the suggestions don't feel good, you can always play around, make any necessary adjustments that you might like to have. And I'm always here if you have any questions at all. And so, depending on the width and the height of your bolster, create a little incline, if you will. I like to use blocks in this way. You can play around with it. It's almost like a little incline bench here. And then you'll want to sit at the base of your bolster. And I like to give a little bit of space between my hip and the bolster to take a little pressure off the low back. Make you can see how this feels in your body. And then lay all the way back and ensure that the torso, particularly the mid and upper back, and of course the head and neck is fully supported. And again, once you lay back, if there's any pinchiness in the low back, then that's a great opportunity for you to start to do something differently. So perhaps inch the hips a little further forward, see how that feels. Walk the shoulders a little closer, let them really cradle the base of the heart. And if it's comfortable for your shoulders, take the hands a little wider. You can play around with the various placements, see how that feels. And then to begin, any variation is welcomed here with the legs. So you could begin with the knees bent. I find this to be particularly supportive to the low back. You might be craving the legs stretched long, a little release through the front of the hip. Or even alternatively, you could explore a hip opening cross-legged or bound angle, soles of the feet together, knees stand out to the side. Fine tune anything that needs adjusting. And then blink the eyes closed if you haven't already. And begin to direct your mind's attention into the natural rhythm and the cadence of your breath here. In other words, as you breathe, curiously follow the inhale as well as the exhale. Feel the expanse of the breath of the body each time you breathe a breath in. And feel all that is softening as you breathe out. And how there's a myriad of movement even as you abide in stillness. And now that you've had a few moments here, start to take inventory of what is present for you physically. Scan the body from head all the way to your toes. And notice how you feel if there's anything that needs care and tending to today. Move your awareness further and further within and start to notice, contemplate how you're feeling energetically and emotionally. Are you buzzing on the inside? Do you feel a sense of ease or peace? The mind running wild with thought? Is it quiet and contemplative? And as you gather this information, perhaps an intention might bubble up for you this evening. Perhaps a word or several words that serve as a foundation of your intention, of your practice here. What is it that you're calling in, and what are you ready to nourish within? Placing your intention with a little imagination into the vessel of the breath so that every breath bathes you with your intention. Feel the vibration of the words you've chosen here and let them whisper to you. And we'll be here for several more breaths. Begin to turn over any responsibility of time. Let it reside in my hands. And just rest and breathe and feel. And feel this next breath move in and feel it move all the way out again. And we'll all meet up laying as you are, but with the knees bent. Peel the feet a little bit wider than the hips and gently allow the knees to fall slightly inward to create a subtle internal rotation. We'll be here for several more breaths. You can continue to rest and breathe. And this is a little counter so that if the knees were wide open, it's a little counter to reset the thigh bone in the hip socket. And it also helps to stretch the outer hip or create a very gentle opening to the outer hip. Ensure that there's no tug to the knee, whether it's this pose or in any pose. Just a few more breaths. Moving at a snail's pace, begin to gently roll onto your right side, and you can settle there into the fetal position. Boom the knees inward, let your head rest in your own bicep, cradled in your own embrace. And then with the strength of your hands, begin to press your way forward and up, coming onto all fours. And you can use your props quite similarly for the next pose. Start to make our way into child's pose. Here, the big toes can touch, the knees can draw wide, wider than the hips, perhaps even as wide as the edge of the mat. And if you like the little incline, you can keep it as is. I also like this variation with the blocks a little bit higher as well. Lifting the props towards you, filling in the gap between you and the earth. And there's additional ways that you could use props. So if you feel this really pulling on the knee in any way, always take your pillow, place it between your buttock and the lower leg, right behind the knees. And then from there, as you drape your torso forward, let it lean forward into support, the upper body, the chest, the head and neck, again, all supported. Again, if at any time there's another way you'd like to utilize the props, feel free to do so. You can set them aside. You can integrate even more. And then once you've found the sweet spot, once again, blink the eyes closed. It initiates the process time and time again to move the awareness inward. Send your mind's attention back into the breath, and the breath will serve as, again, a vessel to connect the body and the mind, to bring our minds into the feeling body, to connect them once again. And you could stay with this exploration of contemplating how you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. See what's present for you here. Hearing again the echo of your intention right there in the breath, as every breath bathes you with all that you're calling in and all that you aim to nourish within. Again, we have several more breaths to breathe, to relax, to feel. At any point in time, you can turn your head and neck. Otherwise, continue to rest, feel, and breathe. As you continue to breathe for these next several breaths, can you notice how the back body is expanding with each inhale? And how there's a little more space between the shoulder blades right there at the top of the breath. In contrast, can you feel all that is softening, what might be releasing as you exhale the breath away? And this posture has a whole myriad of benefits. It's like compression into the abdomen helps to stimulate abdominal organ function. And it's most known for its release to the back line of the body, particularly the low back, mid back, and upper back. Feel as this next breath floods and flourishes across the back body. And empty the breath all the way out. Indulge in a couple more breaths just like that. If there's another point of focus with the breath that you enjoy, definitely give yourself permission to make it your own. And then begin to use your hands to walk yourself back up. And then you can take your props and set them gently off to the side, having them within reach so that if you decide you want to integrate them in later, you can. And then from there, staying in onto all fours. Now, if you're craving a little release, you can always extend one leg back, the next leg back, or you can always pop back into a down dog just to fill out the feet, a little reset. And then from there, moving into a threaded needle, sweep and reach your right arm wide and high up to the sky. And then with your exhale breath, let it guide you into a threaded needle. Reach your right arm underneath and through to the left side. Now, if the shoulder feels far away from the floor, you could reach for your bolster or a pillow or even a blanket and slide it underneath. Same thing goes for any additional support to the head and neck. This posture has all the benefits of a mild inversion. It helps with circulation. There's a gentle twist through the mid and upper back, as well as a release to the posterior shoulder. So this is a go-to for me anytime I'm feeling tension through the mid and upper back, especially the shoulder and neck. If you're looking ways to deepen the posture, whether it's this posture or another, I encourage you to let that go and instead deepen the breath and see what comes from that. And the breath can serve as almost like an internal massage from the inside to the outside, expanding you from within. The practice of concentrating the mind's attention into the breath will naturally lengthen the inhales and exhales. This means there's more oxygen readily available for the body, helps to strengthen and lengthen the musculature that's responsible for breathing. And it begins to shift us from a state of a sympathetic nervous system to more of a parasympathetic state. And this is where healing and release comes into play. And I'm guessing you can intuitively know this in your body just from a state of ease. Let it trickle in. Just a couple more breaths here. And taking your sweet time, begin to unravel. Sweep the right arm back up to the sky, a little counter twist, a little release. And then release your right arm back to the mat. And there, peel and reach your left hand wide and high up to the sky. And then thread the needle so that your left shoulder, cheek, and ear rests effortlessly onto the mat. Blink the eyes closed. Oftentimes, when the mind is wandering, the eyes are wandering. And so, again, initiate this process of turning and attuning the awareness in. Another few breaths here. Again, leave the count to me. And if the mind is starting to serve up a feast of feelings or thought, just know that that's what the mind does. It thinks, it plans. Even the mind needs time to rest. And so if you can let yourself off the hook and rest into the intuitive knowing of your body, breathe, feel, and allow the sensations within guide you. One last breath. And then slowly begin to unravel, stretch and reach your left hand back up to the sky. And then release your left hand back to the mat. From there, come over onto your right hand and sit onto your right outer hip, right thigh. And place your right shin roughly at about parallel to the front edge of the mat. If it feels more comfortable to have it a little closer, by all means, feel free to do so. Your left knee can be bent slightly out to, or offset to the side, and your left foot straight back. And if you prefer the left foot out to the side, that's good too. Sometimes it takes pressure off the front of the foot. You can always reach for a towel or a blanket and place it under the foot if you want added support. The key here is you want to make sure that this feels okay in your left knee. And then take your props, reach for your block, or your two blocks rather, and your bolster. And here you can place the bolster again on top of the blocks if you wish. Again, always have options here. And then sitting upright through the spine, let the weight sink into your right hip and then gently teeter forward with your upper body. Little variation I call lightning bolt is a gentle release to the outer hip and inner groin. Having said that, it might feel gentle or it might feel rather intense, just depending on what's present for you in the hip. I like this variation of a hip opening as the entire outer leg is on the floor and there's less risk, I find, to torque or pull or recruit movement from the knee. Having said that, you want to ensure that there's no discomfort to the low back. So because the hips are offset with the placement of the spine, you want to make sure that there's no pinchiness. And if there is, it just means we need to change something up. So you might choose instead to take a traditional pigeon or sit more upright through the spine. Check back in with the breath. And again, if it's shallowed in any way, enliven it again. Not necessarily from any effort, but from encouraging more ease. Notice how you feel. And if there's the desired amount of sensation, stay exactly as you are. There's nothing, no need to change a thing. However, if you're craving a little pigeon or sleeping swan, feel free to experiment with that as well. This will also, for me, it accesses the hips a little differently and sometimes creates a little more sensation in different areas of the hip. And so to come into sleeping swan or pigeon, the right shin comes to about a 45-degree angle, give or take. You level off the hips and extend the back leg as far as it will reach. I usually do a little check-in between my outer right hip and the floor. And if there's any more, I find then a fist width of space, a little pillow to the outer hip can feel supportive and actually facilitate even more release. You can even thread a bolster all the way underneath the pelvis if you wish. And if any bony parts of the body are feeling a little feedback from the floor beneath you, again, feel free to reach for any pillows, blankets, towels. For me personally, my right hip is very, very different than my left hip. There's some imbalances, some fusion. And so what I need on my right side compared to the left is very different. And so if you know this in your body, feel free to make it your own. And as you allow the time and the posture itself to unravel the hips, to facilitate freeing up the low back, explore where else you might be holding tension in the body. Is the jaw clenching? What happens if you open it wide and wiggle it from side to side, leaving a little space between the lips? This class being a blend of yin and restorative type postures, this one for me is certainly more yin-like in that there's an added challenge to the hips. I'm definitely feeling a lot more of a release, definitely a little more intense in nature. All the more opportunity to come further into relationship with the breath. Let it quiet the mind. Let it calm and soothe the body. Breathe in and breathe out again. Feel again into the fullness of the inhale. Feel again into the depth of the exhale. A couple more breaths, just like that. Begin to slowly rise back up onto the hands. Take a moment to pause. Into the back knee forward a couple times, just to add a little added stability, support. And then extend the right leg straight back into a three-legged table, or you could bring toes to the floor and extend the leg back. And then if there's any additional movement, feel free to trust the organic movement in the body. For me, a little gate pose always feels really nice here. Looks that circle. When you come back through, you might jump rope the spine a couple times. Just watch any after image away. And then come onto your left hip. Place the left shin at about a parallel angle to the front of the mat, or you can always shift it slightly back. Again, here your right knee is bent. It can be quite far forward. It can be a little further back. Right toes straight back or pointed out to the side, depending what feels most supportive for your knee as well as your low back. And then gently fold forward from there. A little release to the low back, the outer hip. Know that you can always rewind the posture to where it feels more sustainable so you can sit more upright and choose other posture options that feel good for you in this time. And again, if there's any pinch or any negative feedback from the low back, just honor that. Explore sleeping swan, pigeon, or of course a reclining figure four. It's always there for you. Notice what thoughts are bubbling up here for you. And let them go with the same ease in which they arrive. There's always an opportunity to hang on to thoughts, to cycle and spin, to let them subside. And the more we make that choice, the more we strengthen that very practice of not being attached or identified by thoughts. You're seeing them as information. In the next breath or two, take inventory of how you're feeling once again. Move your way inward from body, heart, and mind. And if your body is encouraging you to stay as you are, stay as you are. Otherwise, begin to shift towards sleeping swan or pigeon as you might know it. Level off the hips, extend the right leg straight back. Here again, you could reach for a pillow, tuck it to the outer left hip. And then gently release your way forward. For these last few breaths, again, relax the jaw if you haven't already. Perhaps even a little furrow between the brow could grow wider. And what happens as you uncurl your fingers and at the same time release any thoughts that might be occupying the mind? Begin to slowly make your way back up, crawling up onto your hands, inch your back knee forward a couple times, and then unravel the left leg, extend it straight back, toes to the earth or floating. And then again, if there's any other shapes that the body is craving, feel free to layer that in at this time. And there's that rebound, that feeling, that after image, that craving of movement is an intuitive knowing of what the body needs next. And so trust that. From there, make your way onto kneeling or seated, depending on what feels most supportive. So after hip openings like that, I don't love cross-legged. So if you find that to be the case, my recommendation would be to come to kneeling, seated onto a block. Having said that, if you love cross-legged and it doesn't feel, and it feels good in your hips, then feel free to head on in there. And if there's another way that you prefer to be seated, feel free to choose that as well. And then being seated upright all through the spine, without any little kinks here. And then grow tall, telescope up and out of the crown. And then take the right ear gently up and over to the right side. Let the weight of the head get heavier still. And the shoulders even heavier. Move a breath in till you notice the skin across the side of the left side of the neck expand. And then relax deeply. Breathe out. From there, flip your left palms forward and then reach the hands slightly back, almost like you could wedge the left hand into the bottom left corners of the room. Feel a little added stretch here. If you're craving a little added sensation, a little added release, you can use your right hand to help traction the head up and over. And then blink the eyes closed and feel what you've created. Adjust anything that needs adjusting. And soften, even if it's just 2%. Let go of something similar. A couple more breaths just like this. And keep the head as it is, but put the left palm towards the back of the space, spinning the thumb down. And then tuck your hand behind the low back. Just let it rest comfortably there. From there, allow the head to tilt diagonally forward so you feel a little release through not only the side of the neck, but also into the back of the shoulder. Always experiment with the place in the chin, tilting it this way, that way, and letting the body's feedback really guide you to where you need to be. And once you've found where you wish to be, look within and breathe again. Feel as the breath moves into the mid and upper back as well as into the upper chest, letting it massage you again from the inside to the outside. And should the mind tell you this needs to be more or less, can you let that go and see what is available to you in this moment? And then from there, keep your left arm as it is. Place your right hand just below your left collarbone, above the breast, and then press into the flesh. This creates a subtle, subtle little anchor. And begin to tilt the head up and back, looking to the upper right corners of the room. So you feel a little sensation start to come into the front of the neck. You might even feel it move across the collarbone and into the chest. And again, here you can experiment with a little positioning of the chin till you feel a really sweet spot that's calling your attention. Linger there. Blink the eyes closed again, and then dive your awareness back into the breath. Take one more inhale. With care, release both hands and allow the chin to fall effortlessly towards the chest. And take a moment to pause, to feel, and to notice. And then return the head back upright, telescope up and out of the crown, and then take your left ear gently up and over to your left side. Let the head get heavier. The whole shoulders heavier still. Take a couple cycles of breath. Just breathe. And then flip your right palm forward and draw the right hand slightly back and reach it to the bottom right corners of your room. Again, you might feel a little added sensation through the right side of the neck. Of course, the option is there for your left hand to come to the head and neck and just to gently traction it over. Experiment a little with the breath. Breathe in until you feel the right side of the neck expand. You might even feel this all the way into the jaw or even the side of the face. And now flip the right palm to the back of the space, thumb down, and gently wrap the hand behind the low back. From there, allow the head to begin to fall diagonally forward towards the left underarm or left shoulder. Will you feel a little sensation start to move not only into the side of the neck, but also into the back of the shoulder? Again, you can play around with the position of the chin, experiment and explore within the opening. And now that you've been here for a moment or two, keep the right arm as it is and take your left hand just below your right collarbone. Press into the flesh. Create a little anchor, drag it slightly down. And then start to peek toward the upper left corners of the room till you feel a little relief start to trickle in to the front of the neck, across the collarbone, and even into the chest. Again, you can always play around with the different positioning of the head and chin. Notice that the breath has shallowed, and encourage it to move 360 degrees from within. Take this last breath in here. This last breath out. And then release both hands. Allow the chin to gently roll towards the chest. And then pause there. Let the head get heavy. And then slowly return the head back up. Roll the shoulders, wiggle out the head and neck. Or rest in stillness for a moment here. And then begin to shift your weight forward and place your blocks towards the front corners of your mat. And you can play, if you don't have blocks, you can also do this with a couple blanket rolls, towel rolls, or even a couple pillows. And then reach for your bolster. Now you may or may not decide to use your bolster, just depends on how thick it is. For me, mine is pretty narrow. It's one of those rectangular ones. You can skip this part altogether. And then you'll want to place, if you're using the bolster or blanket roll, you'll want to place it right across the front of the pelvis. This is a little release to the low back as you fold forward. And then take your blocks, put them right underneath your shoulders. And you can play around with the different height settings. And if you have a pillow handy, you can place it right in front of you to catch the head. And then allow the chest to start to get super, super heavy here. Let it sink towards the earth. And with each breath, can you feel the shoulder blades starting to integrate a little closer onto the back body? And there's different placements of the hands. I love the hands stretched back, the back of the hands resting on the floor. You might like the hands out to the side or forward. Give yourself permission to feel and experiment and see which is your preference. And this is one of my favorite ways to restore my nervous system and help to reintegrate the shoulders onto the back body. You might even get so curious about the breath that you notice the subtle pause at the very bottom. Watch the response of the body as well as the mind in that moment of letting go. And the greater the inhale, the more opportunity there is for the inhale to flood back in. Feel this next breath move in. Soften a little bit more as you breathe out. A couple more breaths just like that. From there, begin to walk your hands underneath your shoulders. Press over the knees into child's pose just long enough to release the low back, a breath or two to neutralize the spine. And then from there, shift forward onto all fours and set your bolster off to the side, as well as your pillow, and have everything again easily within reach. And there we'll make our way onto the back. So you can make sure you have your strap as well. And as you lower onto your back, begin a moment here with the knees bent. Check in with the natural curve of the spine. Keep a little bend, a little curvature of the low back and spine. And then extend the right leg high skyward while placing the strap across the mound of the right foot. I like to wrap the strap around my hands a little bit more so that I can use the strength of my arms and rely less on my hands. And then you might even bring your awareness back to your low back. Notice if it's hollowed out, if it's flattened out, and if so, reestablish the natural curve. Several options. You can keep your left knee bent. Again, this adds a little added stability, or you can explore extending the left leg long. This will help with a little release through the left hip. And if the left leg is straight, press through the left heel and the left thigh bone. Keep it slightly active. And this again will add some stability to the low back. And then play around with the depth of stretch. Where is it too much where the leg is shaking and trembling, adding resistance? Where is it complacent, where there's just not enough stretch that there ever be any change? And then land somewhere in between where you feel sensation through the back of the right leg, but there's also a great degree of sustainability. Blink the eyes closed once again and return to the breath. Now that you've been here a few moments, check back in if the sensation has begun to dissipate. See that as an invitation to explore a little more range or to be content exactly as you are. Take one last breath in here. And then slowly release the strap from the right foot and lower the right leg towards the mat. Stretch the left leg alongside it to feel the after image of your opening. Notice the right side compared to the left compared to the right. And also what's present for you in the low back. Walk the feet back in, knees bent. Maintain a little curve through the low back and spine. And then place the strap over the left foot, extend the left leg high. Again, your choice to keep the right knee bent, the right leg long, and to explore till you find a sweet spot. Not too much, not too little, somewhere in between. Last couple breaths here. And then slowly release the left foot all the way towards the earth. Stretch both legs long. From there, notice how you feel. Hug both knees into the chest from there and give yourself a great big squeeze. Little decompression of the low back and spine. Now, if you love a luxurious, longer Shavasana, now's a great time to head on in. So you could drape your legs over your bolster or even lift the bolster up a little bit with a couple blocks, a little Stonehenge release. You might throw the legs up the wall, not throw the legs, but bring the legs up the wall. Or you might prefer to revisit a pose, maybe lay prone with blocks underneath the shoulders. If you prefer a little long or a little shorter Shavasana, you can always choose a posture or two of your favorite choice. From here, you can leave all responsibility of time in my hands. I'll wake you up in time. And begin the process of letting go. Almost like you are falling through water or floating through the sky. Feeling the weight of the body until it feels weightless. Let go of any conscious control of the breath and soften so sweetly that you allow the breath to begin to breathe you. And so it's directing your body into movement instead of the movement to allow the breath. Namo Namo Anjanina Naya Jaya Sitara Jai Jai Baba Hanuman Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Begin to deepen back into the breath. Feel the breath awaken you. Let it bring you back alive into this moment. And then with a big luxurious stretch, begin to extend the arms all the way overhead. Stretch the legs long. And with care and ease, find your way to seated. You can roll to the side or up and down the length of the spine. And then once you arrive, gather your hands through to your heart center or into prayer and bow slightly inward. Notice how you feel in this moment, body, heart, and mind. And carry with you this sense of connection to self, to the breath, as you carry your practice off the mat into your days, living through your yoga. Thank you so much. Namaste.